Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you cutting edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. And, every week I say we're going to do it again, but this week we're really going to do it with one of my most favorite people on the planet. Augie and I have had the blessing of being with Dan a few times, several times on interviews and in conversation. And I'm going to let Augie do his intro, but just be prepared to stay for the whole show tonight because it's going to be completely amazing from one of the most incredibly intelligent and researched person that I've ever met. So anyway, before we get started, as usual, I want to invite you guys to come hang out with us. Come hang out with us on Sunday at the Mastermind Connection. We do beautiful guided imagery for a purpose in our minds. We go to a vision of how we want the world to be, how we want humanity to be, how we want health to be. And together we imprint that we stamp that into the quantum realm, and then it comes and takes shape in the physical. So if you want to join us, send an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com, themastermindconnection@gmail.com. Thank you last week for the super chat. I didn't get to thank you on the air. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. We love when you gift us with the super chat, but we also love that you're just here every week and you're talking to us in the chat room. And it's family and friends, and we love you. So Augie, can you tell us about our amazing guest?
Oh yes, this is going to be so much fun. We have Dan Willis returning to Broadcast Team Alpha. And I also want to right up front let you know where you can reach him.
In the chat room.
You will find him at his website of thewebmatrix.net. Thewebmatrix.net. Okay, we got that one out of the way, so now you know how to find him. Dan is an incredible researcher and a good friend. And boy, oh boy, have we had some deep discussions over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been great. I want to say that Dan has been on both sides of the veil when it comes to classified information. In fact, he was one of the Disclosure Project's top secret military witnesses that testified at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in 2001 in front of every major media outlet you can possibly think of. And of course, this was all on the UFO issue and also the extraterrestrial presence. And they proved by testimony that yes, UFOs are real and the extraterrestrial presence is right here today, as it was 20 years ago. And he has also been a radio broadcast engineer and an ABC newsman, so he understands very well what's happening in the news these days. And he also spent, I think, almost 10 years traveling around the world, investigating and proving free energy, and that it is real, but it is being withheld from us. But today we're going to talk about what life would be like if we were allowed to have these technologies that would give us good health, long life, repair damaged bodies and organs. And yes, these technologies are here right now, and but we have not been allowed to have it. So maybe there's something to these old sayings that says something like, there's no money in the solution, there's only money in the problem. And there's another one too, a healed patient is a lost customer. So tonight we're going to talk about some of these solutions, and we're going to do that in as diplomatic way as we can possibly think of, because some of these people that think they are God's younger brother, they're watching, so we're going to act accordingly. Hey, welcome to the show, Dan.
Welcome, Dan.
Aggie, Nori, love you guys so much. You've been doing so much incredible work with your broadcast team Alpha show and bringing so much awareness to everyone. And you've, interviewed a lot of these 20 and back secret space program witnesses, of which I have as well. And, many of them are talking about they do their around their 17 years, they get taken, sign up, and they do 20 years in space. And then they get put on one of these, they call med beds, and age reversed and time reversed back to their point of enlistment, where they begin their normal life. And in 20 years passes, they start to having total recall of their, and there's so many of them coming out. And some of them have been in combat that have lost their leg or arm, and they get on these med beds and they completely regenerate it. So you can imagine all of our military that have, suffered in wars. I was in combat action on the rivers of Vietnam, and that filled all the guys in the Middle East wars that have, lost their arms and their legs. This kind of technology could restore their life. And so anyway, what inspired this show? The fact that we know about these med beds. I was watching a video with two contactees. Now we have, another source of information from contactees, such as Elena Danan was on there with Alex Collier, and Alex Collier was describing what he was given from the Andromeda group, how the technology of the med bed work. And I was listening to this, and I thought, oh my God, in the 1980s, I worked with IBM's top scientist, Dr. Marcel Vogel. He had hundreds of patents, invented the coating on magnetic hard drives, red and blue phosphors for color television, liquid crystals. He was an incredible genius of a man who, because of some paranormal experiences with working with plants and then crystals, he retired from IBM and he set up a laboratory, Psychic Research Incorporated. He invited me to be a research associate, and I went to the mines and got tons of crystals. We were working with 24 medical doctors. And one of the projects I worked on, the technology that was built and patented back in the 1950s substantiates exactly what Alex Collier was saying about how our bodies are holographic and how they can be tuned through time and restored using this holographic technology. So there's incredible medical technologies that have been withheld. And I'd like to go over the first half of the show. I like to go over kind of a little history that's not commonly known about how our medical system has gotten so corrupt.
Please do, because that'll help on the understanding later on, especially when you talk about these technologies, that some of it was even patented. So that'll make it easier to understand what I guess the punchline towards the end of the show will be.
Indeed. All right, I'm going to do a share screen, and so feel free to inject. I'll stop the share screen and we'll converse about a particular topic, but we're going to go through a little not taught in school history lesson.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Yep, there we are.
Okay, well, the title of this, I threw this together today, sort of a timeline of events. The tyranny of suppressed medical technologies. Here on planet Earth, we have a global population of about 7.8 billion humans. The average Earth human lifespan is about 78 years old. That's not very long. Elsewhere in our galaxy, advanced extraterrestrials, which we share some of their DNA with, since we're a combination of several, their average lifespan is in hundreds or even thousands of years. Why not on our planet Earth? We're going to go through a brief history of how our planet's future was technologically hijacked. I'd like to acknowledge a few doctors who oppose this medical tyranny. I feel like I'm kind of channeling the DNA within me of my great-grandfather. He was the president of a homeopathic medical society, Dr.
Wow.
Herbert Bishop, who was at the time in the heyday of going up against the allopathic medicine of Rockefeller and going against natural medicine and homeopathic and shutting them down with their huge financial resources. They took over and moved from there. There's some scientists that had amazing discoveries. Dr. Royal Raymond Rife was a scientist who discovered how to cure cancer with frequency oscillations. All the cells in your body all have a particular frequency and they all oscillate. And what he was able to do is attune into the bad guys, the cancer cells, whatever, pump that oscillation into it and actually explode it like a opera singer would break a glass. Now, he was able to take 16 terminally ill cancer patients as a test for all this, and he was able to cure every single one of them in a 1934 study. Now, the gentleman who organized this event, he was about to make it report to the public on this, but he was fatally poisoned just before he was able to do that, and the papers were lost. Dr. Max Gerson, he was a nutritionist who was murdered and who cured my mother of cancer. The US doctor said if I take my mother across the border, which it make it illegal in the United States, she was going to die for sure. I became friends with his daughter, Charlotte Gerson, who said he got strychnine poisoning when he was bringing his book out, A Cure for Cancer, but he was able to cure himself. Then once his book was published, he got an even heavier dose of strychnine poisoning, and this time it killed him. The American Cancer Society published his death and said he died of, you guessed it, cancer. So how did this medical tyranny begin? On Earth, it started, as far as I can see, the Rockefeller Foundation and IG Farben were heavy contributors to this. The philosophy of Mayor Rothschild once stated, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws." And this seems to be the fundamental of how the laws governing the people of this planet are influenced and can be corrupted by the wealthy elite. The Hippocratic oath that all doctors take is to do no harm. The American Medical Association, by 1900, natural herbal remedies, homeopathic or Native American remedies that were effective were being shut down and enforced by the AMA for profitable pharmaceutical drugs. Since that time, doctors in medical school receive an extremely minimal amount of nutritional training. I think it's like in the 4 years, it's like less than 24 hours. So they don't understand nutrition from their schooling. The pharmaceutical corporations influence the actual textbooks of a medical doctor's education. A suspiciously large number of ongoing holistic doctor deaths have occurred. Hospital medical mistakes and errors are the third leading cause of death next to heart attacks and cancer. The pharmaceutical corporations influence the mainstream media, as we see every night on, if you ever watch mainstream news, all the pharmaceutical commercials. Social media and the search engines like Google support their drug sales. Dr. Alan Greenberg said it well. He said, as a retired physician, I can honestly say that unless you're in a serious accident, your best chance of living to a ripe old age is to avoid doctors and hospitals and learn nutrition. herbal medicine, and other forms of natural medicine, unless you are fortunate enough to have a naturopathic physician available. Almost all drugs are toxic and are designed only to treat the symptoms and not to cure anyone. The Rockefeller Foundation and IG Farben worked together on patentable pharmaceutical drugs, shutting down the natural approaches to medicine. There's a whole history. We're just touching very lightly on all this. They were the ones that actually funded and responsible for bringing Adolf Hitler into power, which started World War II. In 1933, some of you will be aware of this, some of you may not. The Draco reptilian extraterrestrials violated the Prime Directive and assisted the Nazi SS of Germany in Antarctica with advanced technologies, such as anti-gravity craft. The Nazis had a plan. It's called Weltanschauungskrieg. It means worldview warfare. After the war, the Nazis carried out their plan to infiltrate into the US to control the CIA, the media, pharmaceutical corporations, NASA, military industrial complex, etc., to create a false matrix of perception to hide these operations from the public. One of the US Navy witnesses, William Tompkins, who was involved in the secret space programs, he said, quote, "The Nazi scientists that came over in paperclip took over the aerospace and biomedical operations within the US. One of the first Nazi biomedical takeovers was Scripps Research, that's over in San Diego. Eventually, the highest positions within the US pharmaceutical industry are in their control today." After World War II, the horrendous crimes of the Nazi doctors, the Nuremberg trials of IG Farben, they established the principle of informed consent as international law, which is applicable today as it was back in 1946. The pharmaceutical corporations were then split after the Nuremberg trials from IG Farben, Hitler's largest financial backers, to the names you see on your television set all the time, like Pfizer, Bayer, Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, you know them all. 1946, a lot of people don't know this, but in Operation Paperclip, they brought over 1,600 former Nazi scientists and doctors, including some of Adolf Hitler's closest collaborators, including men responsible for murder, slavery, and human experimentation, including men convicted of war crimes, men acquitted of war crimes, and men who never stood trial. The CDC, Center of Disease Control, is formed this year with many of these, quote, former Nazis. In February 1st, 1952, something I had 10 years experience with, dealing with energy inventors. I traveled around the world meeting with these, and just a nightmare. They're received these national security orders. The Invention Secrecy Act 1951 is an act that's suppressing thousands. Right now, there's around 6,000 or so technological advances in energy, medical, and anti-gravity propulsion that have been withheld. Your national security order says your invention has been deemed to be a detriment to the national security of the United States, therefore you cannot share it with anyone. This is an example of one of the secrecy orders. Flying in from Venus, March 1957, Valiant Thor arrives in a spaceship to meet with President Eisenhower and offers solutions to Earth and is denied. Valiant Thor's incredible offer to help Earth's ending sickness and disease and other non-polluting energy technologies is refused, because these solutions would jeopardize Earth's corporations, such as the pharmaceutical and energy industries. My dear friend Laura Eisenhower is well aware of this, as well as Elena Dinan has quite a bit of information on Valiant Thor. 1992, United Nations adopted the agenda. We'll probably, you can see the words up there. Program to reduce 90% of the populace. This was signed by President George H.W. Bush. The Nazi eugenics plan to reduce the population for the New World Order. This has always been part of their plan. They've employed over the decades various methods fluoride in our drinking water, genetically modified organisms in our food supply, chemtrails in our air. AIDS was deliberately created. In 2022, today, our current challenge of medical tyranny for you know what, using these as you know what, and this agenda is supported by psychological warfare broadcast by the mainstream media that is centrally controlled. If you look at the history of it, how the Nazi SS set up the Bilderberg meetings and how the 6 corporations that control everything you see and hear are all supporting the agenda. We could safely say that, right? Okay, in 2001, military intelligence witnesses willing to testify on oath come forth that they're wanting to bring about a congressional hearing to release these extraterrestrial derived advanced technologies. There's 20 witnesses that went before one of the largest events of the national history of the National Press Club. And we were backed by over 500 military and intelligence witnesses. I was
You're
one of
number
the,
6 from the left.
yeah, that was me over
Right.
here, the only one wearing a gray suit.
Yeah.
Rebel.
Yeah, I was one of these 20 top secret military witnesses willing to testify under oath as penalty of perjury and breaking national security oaths, but they can't use the rule of law against us because the group that would use the rule of law is actually illegal. So this was on May 9th, 2001. So what brought about that event? It goes back to February 11th, 1955. A surrender agreement was made between the Eisenhower administration and the Nazi Draco alliance due to their technological superiority. The Nazis were like 20 years ahead of us. Since that time, every president, CIA director, heads of intelligence have been denied access since President Eisenhower was denied access.
So can we just note here, this is critical in the United States history. That happened on my birthday.
Really? February 11th, 1955?
Well, I wasn't born yet, but yeah.
Amazing, amazing.
Just playing.
Okay.
Special day.
Right. President Eisenhower, let's be clear that previously, in February 1954, he had a first contact meeting with the Galactic Federation. Eisenhower had planned, according to witnesses that like Gerald Light, who was one of the witnesses that witnessed this, and this is like a document, he planned on having public disclosure on radio and television in May of 1954, but he was circumvented by the MJ-12 control group, which opted for secrecy and a technology transfer with the Draco Orion group that the Galactic Federation warned about. So that's what happened. Instead of going to disclosure in 1954, it went into secrecy. How was this brought into awareness? Well, in 1997, a Pentagon meeting is held with the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson. The admiral was denied access. He was shown a National Reconnaissance Office document that had these on a distribution list, unacknowledged special access programs that were reverse engineering this extraterrestrial technology. And him and his constitutional authority should have had access, if anybody. And he instructed Dr. Stephen Greer to bring forth witnesses willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing, before the mainstream media of the world, in order to expose these illegal operations. This is what brought about the 2001 disclosure event, but the full testimonies were sanitized from the public's awareness by the infiltrated, corrupt, controlled mainstream media. Such testimonies as the bases on the other side of the moon. We had faster than light craft back in the 50s, President CIA directors being denied access. We had 0-point energy. We haven't needed nuclear oil and coal for 70 years. on and on. That's what comes to mind, that what happened when we went to the moon in 1969. All these explosive testimonies were completely sanitized, and the mainstream media, CNN and the rest of them, made it sound like we wanted to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs.
Dan, can I ask you a question? Was
Yes.
there really a disclosure event? And what was it, 2001? Was there really one, or they were going to have one?
Well, the May 9th, 2001 was an event that happened.
What was that?
Yeah, we each gave our testimony before CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS,
Gotcha.
you know, all the mainstream media of the world. And when I was looking at the other witnesses, and what mine was like minor testimony compared to what the other witnesses were saying, I was looking at how could this not be a world-changing event with what's being disclosed.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what Operation Mockingbird was, how the CIA is completely controlled. CBS wanted to do a special interview. I said, I'm not doing this unless I can say we have the scientists that can prove we have 0-point energy. They promised up and down, but then the producer said, I'm sorry, the higher executives, which are CIA, made me cut that part out. So I became very aware that media is very much controlled.
Complicit.
Unbelievable. This is great, Dan.
Okay, here we go into the good stuff. Okay, now it didn't, a lot of people didn't even catch the little minute-and-a-half blip that went on CNN, CBS, ABC, you know, the different news channels that covered it in their very sanitized manner. But on the internet, it went viral. I've seen my testimony and others in a couple of different languages. And there was a hacker in the UK that his name was Gary McKinnon, who hacked. He was inspired by my dear friend Donna Hare, who passed away, that they had evidence of the secret space program. And so he went in and found that evidence. He saw this huge cigar-shaped, you know, these like miles long, kilometers long, of the Solar Warden program, the US Navy's secret space program, with fleet-to-fleet transfers, non-terrestrial officers, you know, incredible. They wanted, the Bush administration was so pissed that he revealed this to the world that they wanted to put him away for 70 years in prison.
And for those of you out there that is doing research, go ahead and Google, or maybe some other platform, the Hillenkotter. That is the name of one of those mile-long cigar-shaped ships that the secret space program made. The Hillenkotter.
Good point, Augie. Yes. Who was Hillenkotter? Let's take a look at what names would you give the Navy's secret space program? He was an admiral in the Navy. And what was his position? He was the first CIA director. And what else was he? He was also MJ1. In other words, head of the MJ12 group, of the original group that Truman set up in 1947. But then it was taken over, and then Alan Dulles became, who was highly instrumental into the Nazi infiltration. He became the MJ1, and he wrote the assassination directive for John F. Kennedy and so forth. And so a very infamous individual.
Wow.
So yeah, let's look at this. This is, we're getting into the good stuff here.
Yeah.
So, so the secret space program, what evidence of it is there? Well, the secret space program of the Navy launched back in the 1980s. What's 20 years from 1980? It's the year 2000. And like clockwork, in the year 2000, Michael Ralph was one of the first secret space program witnesses that came public. Since that time, many of which you've interviewed, you know, like Randy Kramer and so forth. My good friend Tony Rodriguez had an incredible experience. And there's so many of them. There's so many witnesses that are coming forth. And they're having, after 20 years, lapses on this timeline. This is incredible technology. I know it sounds like science fiction to the average person who goes through our indoctrination on this planet. But since the year 2000, these people have been having total memory recall, and that a lot of them testified that they've been treated on these medical technologies they call med beds, where the med beds would age reverse them 20 years back and time reverse them back to their point of enlistment around 17 years old or so, and completely wipe their memories. And then 20 years go by and they start having recall. Some of them, as we mentioned earlier, like Randy Kramer, I think he lost an arm, and others have been severely attacked. And, you lose an arm or something, you think that's it for life. But with these med beds, they're able to completely regenerate that. And in fact, they can regenerate and fix anything. We won't use that other word. That's like,
yeah, in a little bit, we're going to talk about the technology, the verifiable technology that makes this happen.
Okay, we're right on schedule. We're halfway through the show right now. Yeah, so we're now going to get into this medical technology that inspired, doing this show. These advanced medical technologies are potentially going to be released to the people here on Earth. Due to the Prime Directive is real. What we saw in the 60s with Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, he was actually working with the Office of Naval Intelligence that disseminated that information to the public to seed the collective mind. And the Prime Directive is a real thing. The Dracos violated that. And so the Galactic Federation had an obligation due to the Prime Directive to assist Earth. And they have, from what I understand, I don't have direct knowledge of this, but I understand that the Orion and Draco have been removed from our solar system. And now we only have to deal with Earth minions. And they are producing, I understand, on the moon and elsewhere, these med beds and advanced technologies that can be disseminated all over the planet that can help, people who've gotten injected. They may be able to reverse that. There's potential there. Yes. Now, I'd like to. This is what inspired doing this show. I was listening to this show with Elena Danan and Alex Collier. And I'll let him describe it in his own words, and listen carefully to what the Andromedas told him how the medbed technology works.
Let's just start it off. The medbeds is holographic technology. It's also color, light, and sound. This technology, this knowledge has been around since before Atlantis on this planet, and it has existed off-world for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of years, with other star nations and star traveling pioneers. Mm-hmm. They understood a very, very long time ago that our bodies are holographic, that we are essentially made of color, light, and sound. And it wasn't until, 25, 30 years ago that we were able to scientifically prove that by looking at the body under an electron microscope. And what they did not see was physicality. What they saw was light. Now, Nikola Tesla had talked about all these types of different technologies or concepts that he knew to be true simply because he was a genius, but of course he was having contact in his own way as well during his lifetime. But he was just the genius. And I don't know that there's been anyone like him since. But the technology wasn't there for him to actually put all of this together to where it is today. unfortunately, he didn't live long enough. So, essentially what we're talking about here is healing the human body. Now, the holographic camera that the A's use, they call it a camera. What it does is it takes a picture of your body. And this picture, because it's holographic, is a picture of the present time when the picture is being taken, and it goes all the way back to conception. And what they do is they will go through these series of slides that are taken in this one picture. And what they will do is they will pull out the particular slides of where your body was the healthiest, whether it's kidneys, liver, muscle, knees, brain, heart, it doesn't matter. And what they will do is they will put those pictures together and create a new hologram. And then what they will do is they will overlay that holographic picture onto your physical body, literally healing it and renewing your body while you're there. It's just, there are no words. And to them, it's simple because they understand. They have all the knowledge. Nothing's been suppressed for them, and they understand who we are and what we are. Here on Earth, however, and in other star systems that have been controlled and manipulated by the Orion group, we haven't had that education or that knowledge. But nonetheless, this technology is coming out. This technology has been created. It is in use, I'm sure, in Black projects. I am sure that it has been used on humanity, humans of some sort, maybe the elite. We hear that it's being used on the children that are pulled from the underground dumps. We can sincerely hope that that is in fact true, because they certainly would deserve it. It should have been being used on veterans, combat wounded, civilians damaged by war. It should have been in use for quite some time now, but it hasn't been. It has been suppressed. And as you are fully aware, there's a battle between the light and the dark.
Okay. When I heard this, I thought, oh my God, this is what I worked on in the 1980s that was patented and was able to thousands of images. When he says the Andromeda, he calls them the A's. The Andromedas call it a camera, right? And so this project I worked on, we're going to go back to our share here. Okay, what science and technology do we know of that supports the reality of what Alex Collier was saying of the technology of the med beds? My background in this research, this is a little 2-minute clip. This is me almost 40 years ago talking about this technology, but from a whole different perspective.
You might visualize, Alex, and say in the future, a person could walk into a chamber and they could have like these energy transducers. A person could see if there's a distortion in a person's energy field, and then they could use appropriate intervention, energetic means to restore the person's health and balance back using purely energy and vibration. You know, this is science fiction, topic, but we're turning magic into scientific fact as we're discovering things in the laboratory.
Well, is this used after the person is sick, or is it before the person is sick, becomes sick?
Well, if we recognize that the preformative body, which forms the physical body, the symptoms and things occur there first and then into the physical body. If you can sense them there first and alleviate them, you don't have the physical problem. But once the physical problem is there, you can work with the higher formative energy fields and work at it from that point. But if you can catch it in an early stage, it's much easier, of course.
Mm-hmm. Now, I noticed that this one is rather, is most of them are six-sided and other lopsided, as we see in those there. Now, this one's been specially cut.
It's been
Wow.
Me 40 years ago.
Yeah,
Great. That's
gosh.
great.
And here is that here's that crystal. This is
Wow.
Marcel especially cut this one, made it as a gift for me for going to the mines and bringing him all the crystals that we're using for several 24 medical doctors. It started out with the concept was like the tree of life, where you have the unmanifest going into the manifest. The one side was a 52-degree angle, same as in Great Pyramid, and the other side's a more acute angle, which was used. And the concept is that it acts like a laser. And then they moved into more sides, and this is 8-sided, and this is the energy vortexes. It spirals down the central axis of the crystal, and it's a couples multi-dimensions with the healing, but this is enough for another show.
That's
And
amazing.
here's a 16-sided.
Wow. Wow.
So onward. Okay, back to the camera here. Okay, Dr. Marcel Vogel in his laboratory, he put together this electron microscope by himself. I helped supplement the laboratory. I was working with the Naval Electronic Engineering Center. I was able to get spectrophotometers and different things for the laboratory that we worked on. The crystal acts as like a laser. He used to say these technologies are akin to those that we know in normal physics. Okay, here we go into the camera, the holographic camera. This is a 1950s picture, not on 1955, of the Delaware laboratories. This camera that can tune through time. Thousands of photographs were made with this camera. This is a photograph of a woman that was 50 miles away that they were able to, using a drop of blood, connect to her, and this holographically projected into space and was able to capture it on a photographic image and was able to move it forwards and backwards into time and capture this on film. My assignment with this was, since I had a very high, pretty good level of electronics engineering knowledge, was to take this 1950s technology that was patented by the European Patent Office in Paris, France in 1955. And be able to make it real time, so you don't have to replace the photograph every time, so you could actually see the 3D hologram being projected. Now, people who understand radionics know that the operator plays a significant role. It's not just like a machine that anybody could use. It's like an extension of consciousness, where it's like a tuning focus for the mind. And you have to understand these principles. Now, they wouldn't have received a patent, and it wouldn't have been able to do thousands of photographs unless, this technology worked. The Delaware camera fundamentals substantiate the science behind the med beds. This device, keep in mind, was extremely primitive compared to the med bed technologies or advanced races that are millions of years in advance of us.
So this patent then, this patent, that is the evidence of the science in that camera that is able to take pictures through time. And I know, I'm a patent holder, I know that you cannot get a patent without having a sound base in science behind it.
That's
So
right.
this had to be real.
Well, and the fact that thousands of photographs were made with it as well, it was able to, substantiate it. Here's a woman that's pregnant and she's like 50 miles away, for one example, and able to see the different levels of the baby's progression with the camera. And
Well,
this, let's see, going back to the share screen here. Okay, the camera established that a single drop of blood from an individual is entangled, regardless of time and space, and is a fractal representation of the holographic whole of that individual. People who do voodoo know this, Sound and light can be used as a vehicle to recreate this holographic pattern. Remember, Alex Collier was talking about they used sound and light in the
yep.
in the formation of the energy of the holographic to restore the individual. The time is a tunable vector of the magnetic spectrum, and that spectrum within the hologram has a place in itself for events. Delaware himself said, quote, "Time is a vector of the magnetic spectrum, and that spectrum has a place in itself for events." In other words, Alex Collier was talking about the slides where they pull out slides in different events. There is a pre-physical world in which the camera might be expected to operate. Now, he's talking back in 1955 now. An aspect of an individual can be resonated, such as the baby, the fetus and the mother, through an angular harmonic resonance. And that's a term I've coined in studying radionics and knowing how geometry, angles have different resonances and can be attuned. That's how that's why the tuning dials are able to tune, and they multiply this in order to get a greater fine tuning, because within a circle, all the vibrations of the universe exist, so they use these tuning dials. The camera could not work if this was not true. Again, my involvement was to bring this with real-time video, in order to see this. And it's important to understand, what is a hologram? A hologram forms when two beams meet. And if one's out of phase of the other one, and as they combine together, they create what's called a standing wave patterns. Our bodies and everything physical is nothing but oscillations, and they put out these standing waves, and a lot of them create different geometries. And so our physical body is actually a 3D form that's made up of these standing wave patterns converging that are oscillating from a higher source. And like, for example, here's a butterfly that looks, you can look at it from different angles and it looks real, but it's actually waveforms coming together. And here's how a laser works. You have a laser and you split the beam into two beams. A laser is coherent light. In other words, it's the exact frequency. And when one beam hits the object, what happens is it causes a phase relationship difference, so that when it converges with the original beam, you can see that by the standing wave patterns that are created, that create the hologram in space. And this is basically the principle of how the camera, this is from the actual patent, but I've added the color notations in there. The subject is resonated on this side. There's like three parts of the camera. One's the subject that you're tuning into. Another one's the operator. The other one aligns with Earth. The camera was aligned with the Earth magnetic field. there were sound oscillators in these, and some, Marcel said there was I saw there was golden mean geometries within this, but he said there was also geometries that showed that of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. So these sound oscillator created sound. The oscillations of the subtle oscillation was carried, you could say, piggyback on these sound waves that were coming up in 3 different axes and reflected up above with these lenses and reflectors. And it actually had a polarizer which could shift the phase. And what happens is this energy not only traveled on sound, but it was able to be reflected by light. And the photographic plate is right here. And that's what captured the image. And the time spiral was able to move it forwards and backwards in the time. Here's greater detail of the dials that resonate to a particular aspect of the individual. Here's photos I took while I was working with the camera. The witness plates have a rotational magnet which is adjusted between them. In other words, within a magnetic field, there's a resonance point that you align with the witness. There's a crystal there on this one, but say you have a blood spot or whatever, it's called a witness in the work with radionics. The different cavities, you can see these are sound oscillators. They're oscillating in the cavity. They take the subtle vibrations that are being attuned to through, this is beautifully machined out of brass, and the angular resonance that was in these chambers that the sound oscillators were in were then carried upward. And here's the time spiral. I've worked on a lot of radionic instruments. I actually read back a long time in the 70s about a Fate magazine article about this radionic instrument that was killing the bugs on a field. And then by chance, I happened to actually get my hands on the actual instrument, and I reverse engineered it and understood the mechanism of it. And I built different Hieronymus and Copen type radionic instruments. So I had my feet wet, you know, with understanding, but I've never seen a radionic instrument that was able to tune backwards and forwards in the time. Here's the upper cavity, where you can see the 3 axes where we reflect it and then through lens. And here is the polarizer, which shifted the phase onto the photographic plate was down here below. Now here's an interesting, this is from the Journal of Theoretics. They revealed that they did a computerized analysis showing the 3D structure, and see when it emanated the holographic projection in space that was captured on the film, it only captured a slice, a 2D representation of that 3D projection. And so they were able to use computer generation to analyze the film, and they found that here's the fetal development of 8 and 12 weeks gestation. And this was confirmed by the delivery date. You can see there's 3-dimensional, you can see the skeletal structure of the baby. And so they were able to show that within this film is actually captured the 3-dimensional imaging that was, you know, within the film. So there's a lot of principles at work. Basically, we're a complex oscillation matrix of standing waveforms that creates the physical form that is being transduced from a higher dimensional intelligence. We are multidimensional beings manifested in a universal geometric matrix, and we discovered, you know, both quartz crystals and water universally resonate with this matrix. Love is the fundamental of this matrix, as seen in Dr. Emoto's freeze capturing of these patterns that are affected in water. The higher frequency dimensional forms form the lower as seen in the phantom leaf effect, and where they cut the leaf and there's still the energy, it's like people have their arm missing arm, they have the phantom limb effect, because there's an energy field that's creating the physical dimension that's not removed when you take out the physical form. And this goes into entanglement. It substantiates a lot of what people go into metaphysical research and discover. And so I think we're getting close to the end of the show. We packed in a lot of stuff, and I just
Really
wanted
good.
to share this with the viewers for their consideration. I'm not an expert on the med beds by any means, but when I heard what Alex Collier was saying about how the technology worked, and that this device I worked on, I know worked, it somewhat, you could say, substantiated what he was claiming.
Yeah. Well, we know the med beds are coming because there is a company over in Germany now that has come out and said, we are making med beds. And last year they made 140 of them that they sold. And I don't have it here, but I have it on my Facebook page. If you scroll down about 2 weeks, you will find it. There's a company that is making these things, though they are not as elaborate to the point where they can regrow arms and legs, but they cure or they eradicate symptoms of disease.
Well, there's a lot of smart people on this planet. As you know, I worked for 10 years with a lot of brilliant scientists and inventors that had energy devices, but it's nothing like what they have in the secret space programs. Just like, people on Earth, it's nothing like compared to technology that's millions of years in advance that could, go through and scan your from conception to present, and then piece together all the most optimal parts of your holographic timeline and put it together and reform you. So there's a lot of med bed buzz going on, so people capitalizing on that, but hey, more power to them if they can bring something forth that can help heal people while we're waiting for the good stuff.
There you go.
Sounds good. Wow. No, wow is all I can say.
Yeah, I'm gonna wow too, because this has been so educational, and it gives people hope. And from what we're seeing happening around us in the world right now, in Canada and places, we know it's coming to a head. So a lot of this hidden stuff will be coming out, and this is one of them. It is coming.
Thank God for the alternative media, like what you guys do on Broadcast Team Alpha. And, I like X22 and Stu Peters' show, and other people are coming out, Joe Rogan, who's putting out disinformation, thank God we have alternative media as an alternative to the centrally controlled, corrupted mainstream media, with all of their outlets that they centrally control with their talking points toward their nefarious agenda against the people of Earth.
Exactly.
Can the people reach you? Yeah, go ahead, Nordy.
You can go my non-professional site that I've been taking notes on ever since 2001, thewebmatrix.net. I go put this on the screen here. I forgot to do that. There we go. The lab notes and the patents and everything like that with marcelvogel.org, and all of the things about our government infiltration, the documents that's been authenticated, back up a lot. What was talked about is also on the webmatrix.net. And so those two websites are, and on the webmatrix.net, my email's on the main page, and it has all the other ways of connecting with me if someone wishes to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Before we say goodbye, guys, I just want to mention that we have something new coming up, and it's going to be happening here on YouTube February 11th, and every Friday at 1:11 p.m. we have a second stream of shows opening up. We're going to continue doing what we've been doing here for these years, but now we're opening up to a health, well-being, and lifestyle show. So join us at 1:11 p.m. Eastern on Friday. We're going to kick it off on the 11th, and we're going to have amazing guests, equal, we hope, to the quality of our friend Dan Willis, and it's going to be good. So come see us, guys. Dan, thank you as always. It was, I learned something new.
Totally my pleasure. Hopefully it, maybe inspires some people to take up, but it's like, I wanted to pick it up, but once you understand the secret space program and all this stuff, why reinvent the wheel? I mean, they've got all this stuff from energy to medical and everything already. We just need to have disclosure. We need to have a public awakening, which is happening on a grand scale. And when we have this disclosure, we can have the transformation and liberation of our planet from these elements that have hijacked our planet technologically and medically.
Exactly. So
That will
just
be.
hang on. If you're sick, if you're worried, just hang on. The best thing you can do is, like Dan said, that love is the universal elixir. So if you're sick, if you're scared, just shower yourselves with love and hang tight, because this is coming. It's coming soon.
Yeah.
Right?
Marcel used to say, when I love you, I empower you to be whole. Because our main responsibility is actually to love.
I love that. Beautiful.
Just think of it this way too: is two people talking, and he said one of them, what is the remedy for what I've got here? And the other guy told him, give it love. And then the first one says, what if it doesn't work? The other one says, then increase the dosage. There's something to that.
Yeah, there is.
You can't OD on it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. We'll see you guys next week, right here, Tuesday night. Bye. Thank you, Mac. Thanks, everybody.
Pleasure.